Welcome to the Crypto Traders Podcast, simplifying cryptocurrency for traders and investors around the world. Subscribe for interviews with developers, market updates, and a professional look at the future of money. You've come to trust Matthew and Kurt to filter out the noise across social media. Now you can listen on the go. Without further ado, here's the Crypto Traders Podcast.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Crypto Traders Podcast. I'm Kurt Wooker Jr. I'm here with Matthew John, and we are joined by Vin Armani today. We'll be talking a little bit about the hash war. We'll talk about CoinText. We'll talk about Bitcoin in general, and the crypto sphere and everything that's going on and all the waves that are going on through what seems like the craziest week in crypto in at least a couple of months, right?
For sure. Oh, yeah, for sure.
So welcome, Vin. I'm really, really glad to have you on.
Thank you.
Let's go over your accolades a little bit for anybody who's not aware. Vin, you were the host of the Vin Armani podcast.
Right.
You were the star of Showtime's Gigolos.
Correct.
You're well known as the highest paid straight male escort in history.
I think that's true as well.
CTO of CoinText, founder of CoinText. And
that's right.
And what is Code from Go? Are you the founder there as well?
Yeah, that's my little project. That's kind of a passion project, teaching people to code, teaching noobs who have absolutely no background in coding, getting them sort of spun up and bootstrapped to be able to code. So cool. I love doing that. That's probably my favorite thing that I'm doing at the moment, to be honest. It's just labor of love. I love it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's nothing like seeing eyes light up when you teach somebody how to go from complete ignorance to all of a sudden having some power over their lives, right?
So true. So true.
So that's very cool. I have to say, first of all, that you definitely break my mold for when I think of nerdy, code monkey kind of, I'm a Bitcoin programmer. I don't expect, in shape, man of authority, walking around, that kind of thing. So.
I come from a generation of developers, and I don't know where they went exactly, but it was sort of like 2000. What was that? Probably like about 2003 to about 2010. There was this whole programmer thing, this whole programmer movement, at least in LA where I was at the time. And so I was working at all of these startups, and it was like all we would do is like gym. It was like GTL, man. It was everybody's heavy into the gym, playing beach volleyball, or a lot of guys were skaters. People would play, were big basketball players. At 4 p.m., the mini fridge comes open and everybody's drinking beers. And it was like, it was much more of a frat atmosphere. I don't know if that was just LA's tech community at that time, which was heavily around. I mean, that was like the MySpace days.
Sure.
So you had all of these companies that were there that were more sort of music and media based. So I guess I kind of come from that group. It's definitely not the Silicon Valley vibe. That's
Interesting. Well, yeah, it was fascinating. I mean, for me, Chicago, I think a lot of it has to do with weather. Sure. Like guys that program in Chicago did it because they don't want to go in the cold, and and that creates a whole culture.
Absolutely,
I think.
Absolutely. No, yeah. Everywhere's a little bit different in that regard. So I think coming from the entertainment side gave me a different outlook on how quickly your products have to appeal to the masses. There's in Silicon Valley, there is very much this culture of very interesting projects that are interesting to the technorati, but are not particularly necessarily interesting to the general public. And, being on that entertainment side, and particularly I was in streaming media. So my business mentors were all music guys.
Sure.
A lot of them music label heads, like famous producers. And they were the type of people that they could tell you within 10 seconds of seeing something, hearing something, whether or not that was going to have mass appeal or not. Sure. And developing that, I think, is important. And I think it's really important in the crypto space in particular, starting in on projects. You want to have something that out the gate, people are just like, whoa, this is cool, and I want to use it.
So. Yeah. For sure. Well, and I think that shines through. CoinText was might be the thing I've been the most excited about since like I discovered Monero. I mean, they're like, Bitcoin. I've been a Bitcoiner since about 2012 myself, and I was blown away for a long time. And then I got bored with it actually. 2015, 2016 was kind of like, I'm not into this store of value. The scaling debate doesn't make sense to me. That kind of thing. I always just wanted to use it. I liked the idea of peer-to-peer digital cash, and then I was kind of bored. I got back into it when the bull run stuff started to heat up last year. Bitcoin Cash was something I was hot on as soon as I heard that it was going to happen. Like, oh, cool, Bitcoin's coming back, and then CoinText. As soon as I saw CoinText, that's actually my first exposure to like, oh, Vin Armani, because I had actually seen the Showtime show.
Oh, awesome!
Twice. Like I knew sort of who you were, and was like, wait, he's a what? He created a Bitcoin app? Like, okay, let's check it out. But no, I saw it. And it was the first thing where I was like, oh my God, like I can force someone to have Bitcoin.
Right.
And they cannot stop me if I have their number. So, I mean,
right.
I have 100 friends who are like, literally text me back like, Kurt, I just got Bitcoin on my phone. Is this you? Like, what? Yes, this is what I've been talking about.
That's great. No, and I've really liked seeing you take it out there and use it in the way that it was, designed to be used to evangelize and get people onboarded, because that's where we got to go, man. That's what we got to do.
100%. And that's the beauty of it. It's quite literally my favorite app in crypto ever since the day it came out. And I like Hand Cash. I like some of the stuff other, even like Dash stuff is going on in their universe, but CoinText just straight up simple, functional. And it seems like you've really been busting ass spreading it around the world too. It went from about 6 countries for what felt like 6 months. And now you've got 30, something like that?
Yeah, we're actually live in, I think, 36 at this point, but we just have not publicly announced with all of the stuff going on. We kind of slowed our announcements down, and it's a particular challenge that's different from doing a mobile wallet app where you just got to push it up into one app store. We literally are dealing at every country that we release into, especially at this point as we're like rounding out the country list for us. All of the low-hanging fruit is gone. All of the countries that had great infrastructure and it was easy to put it in, those are all gone. Now it's weeks and weeks of like, the carrier's stripping the euro symbol out. Like, how can we have the euro symbol stripped out in Italy? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Or things like, it's not, going through the number in the way that it's supposed to go through. And so it's like step by step by step. But I think that those are all barriers to entry for other people trying to get in. This has not been an easy project.
No,
but when I hear and see people on social media using it, and especially the ones who are like, when we've connected these countries and somebody in Spain says, I just sent my grandmother in Argentina Bitcoin Cash and she was then able to send it to my uncle. I'm like, wow, that's it, man. Like that right there is exactly what this is made for. So, we've got our merchant solution starting to roll out. We've basically prototyped that with AnyPay. People are already using it to pay at point of sale. We've got some really interesting things that we're doing both charity-wise and with remittances. So I've always, since I first got my first Bitcoin in 2012, I have truly believed that the biggest place to disrupt is remittances. So country to country, people sending money back home, basically.
Sure.
And with CoinText and with the sort of merchant point of sale, I think that we've got a really interesting solution for utilizing cryptocurrency as that bridge in a way that's legal, that fits within all the regulations, where people can be involved and not be considered money transmitters, where even the people who are sending cash don't even necessarily have to know that it's traveling in that manner. And so sort of what I'm hoping that this will turn into as we start to show people is really kind of like the Uber of remittances, if you want to call it that.
Sure.
To where, you, instead of Western Union having a lock on many of these communities, and so you're talking about developed nations where, a huge chunk of money that comes in from many communities is from people working outside. particularly in places like Philippines, in Mexico, in Central America, to be able to empower the people who are within those individual communities to be able to move the money globally, decentralized, without Western Union being there and taking their 10% or whatever. And we'll take our little cut of pennies. But
Sure.
but I think to really enable that, because I do believe that's how you move massive amounts of fiat value into crypto value. And I think at that point is when an explosion will take off. So I'm very, very, very excited about what's coming in the next 6 months with CoinText.
That's awesome. We're excited too. Is there an upper limit? We were talking about Matt's trying to buy a car. He's getting the car dealer to try to set up to accept.
I want to ask him about that.
They're interested, but I mean, can we send 12,000? Can we send $100,000 over CoinText? Is there any limit?
No, you could if you wanted to. You could.
Is there additional fees?
No. The fee is based on the size of the actual bytes of the transaction. So we basically charge our fee in the same way that miners charge their fee. So we charge Satoshi per byte fees.
Gotcha.
And a lot of that is for regulatory reasons. And also, we don't really want to know how much money you're spending. Ideologically, I don't feel that that's what we should be doing. We respect our customers' privacy, and I think that should be private. Of course, it's on the blockchain, but it's not really up to us to say that this user who happens to be sending more money or this user who happens to be sending less money is more or less important. It's like, if you're utilizing our system, you're utilizing, not that you're necessarily utilizing so many more resources, but if you're sending a larger transaction, it's a larger fee, not in terms of money, but in terms of the actual size of the signed transaction. And that's what we're going to use as we roll out even further and as we expand the platform even beyond SMS. So you could send that amount. I would say, though, for those large amounts, I would advise, I say CoinText is a casual spending wallet is how I describe it. It's the kind of thing exactly like you're doing, Kurt. It's the type of money that you would carry around in paper fiat on a day-to-day basis. I think setting them up with a wallet is a good thing. AnyPay has a great solution. If you can go and look, I believe that there's a dealership just right near me in Merrimack, as a matter of fact, that accepts Bitcoin Cash and Dash. And the AnyPay guys actually recently bought a car with, I believe they paid with Dash. So there's probably some articles about that.
Yeah. Joel pushed something like that, or something about that out on Dash Force News. I think it was a Dash transaction for a car.
I'm pretty sure that's right. So those are the AnyPay guys. And it would be, if you're trying to do it car wise, it would serve to reach out to those guys.
To AnyPay?
Yeah, Steven Zeiler and Derek J. Freeman are the two, the CEO and the chief, I believe he's the chief operations officer over there. So, yeah, reach out to the AnyPay guys, and maybe they can even, if this car dealer's curious about it, they can even reach out and ask the guys in Merrimack about it, and I'm sure they'd love to talk to them.
Cool.
I was going to ask you, because at Crypto Traders Pro, we are very much interested in merchant adoption. And part of our what we say or talk about all the time is trying to help businesses accept cryptocurrency. So I'm in the market for a new truck, and I was trying to find somebody on Facebook that would accept cryptocurrency, and I'm not having any luck because cryptocurrency is not hot right now. So trying to force somebody to accept cryptocurrency is hard. Well, I found a used car dealership that I kind of made that proposal, like, hey, this could help your business. The cryptocurrency community would support you. Sure. You would be put on the map as one of the only car dealerships in my area that accepts cryptocurrency. That might help your business. So what I was talking to Kurt about just before you got on the call was, how do I provide them with that solution to get set up to accept cryptocurrency? Because I'm sure they're also going to want to convert some of that to cash or USD.
So what I would say is the combination of AnyPay and Uphold is a really, really great way to go. or it could even be AnyPay and Coinbase. Because the cool thing about the AnyPay point of sale system is that you just provide an address. So if you want to accept Bitcoin Cash, you just provide a Bitcoin Cash address. If you want to accept Dash, you provide a Dash address. Uphold is really good because I think they do Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, and Dash. And moving to fiat with them is really, really simple. We actually use them. They're one of the providers that we use for liquidity when we move fiat with CoinText. So they're I really highly recommend them. And I know that that's something that a lot of the merchants here, that's a combination. That's sort of the stack that many of the merchants are using in New Hampshire. Is they're using Uphold as their back end. And you can even go, I believe with Uphold that you can go straight, do kind of like the way that BitPay does. You could go straight to fiat almost to where it comes in and then like every day or something it reconciles out into your bank account.
Yeah.
So a lot of them use that. And then it's just a payment method, and it just goes in straight. Everything's so I think that Uphold and AnyPay combined together it seems like it's a winning combination.
Does AnyPay offer integration into what they're currently using?
So they're basically a web wallet. They're kind of a web, not even a wallet. They're a web UI. So it's more than anything, it's just a point of sale system. You have to have your own wallet. You have to have control of your own addresses, but those addresses could be from anywhere. They could be from Upholds. They could be from an exchange. I probably wouldn't want to do it that way. Exchange addresses change often enough, but they could be from your mobile wallet. They could be from paper wallets. I mean, it could really be from any valid address. You just stick it in there. So this is kind of a front end. I think now they do have an app. I think I was just hosting Free Talk Live, and they showed me that AnyPay now has an app. I believe it's an Android app. So most people are just running like a tablet. They'll run the app on the tablet. Everything's already inputted. It's super easy. I mean, it's just your classic point of sale. It looks like a Square or any of those.
Sure.
And it works great. And it's integrated with CoinText. So, I mean, gotta throw that little plug out there.
So it's the best one. Nice. So, all right, a couple of questions about the hash war. I don't want to go into this deeply, but first of all, I should say you're doing a kick-ass job on Twitter, putting just thought bubbles and floating them out there. And if I think it's funny that that graphic came out showing like who's on what side of the war, and then you pointed out like, you put me pretty far on one side. I'm surprised to hear that. And I think you've done a good job of being fair with what is actually happening. And I really love the video that you made, basically begging Craig to not go full nuclear Hitler on crypto. But
it's funny, that video, it's funny what everybody thinks that video is, but I should probably release the transcript so people can read it, or if people need to watch it a couple more times, because people are like, oh, you begged Craig not to do it. And it's like, no, I actually said he was going to do it. Like I knew, like the die was cast at that point.
Sure.
Except for people deciding whether or not they were going to get involved. And really the what I was trying to do with that video is trying to explain to people that this was a bigger moment than I think most people had realized.
Oh, yeah.
And that paying attention was going to be very important. And the more there's there's Eric S. Raymond. He wrote kind of the quintessential philosophy book on open source software. It's called The Cathedral and the Bazaar. And in that book, he coined this term that he calls Linus's Law. And the law is, with enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. So meaning that's how open source works, is the whole idea is why it's better, why the bazaar is better than the cathedral, the open source model better than the closed source model, is because you get more eyeballs, and with enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. So the idea is that although a problem to you may seem insurmountable, or it may seem like a big deal, there's someone out there for whom that problem is a piece of cake.
Right.
And vice versa. There's someone out there who has a problem that is right in your wheelhouse that you can solve in 2 seconds.
Sure.
And so the whole idea is we want more people looking at the problem. Even those people who think it's not their problem, because what was so interesting was that the initial response to that from the BTC side, the knee-jerk response was, this doesn't matter. Bcash is going to Bcash. This is this has nothing. And by the day, you had Tone Vase, the biggest ignoramus in that regard. I mean, he was here for PorkFest, and he and I had a little tete-a-tete in private, and I just could not believe how willfully ignorant this dude was of anything that wasn't within his narrative. But yet here he is doing a live stream about it. Here he is interviewing Craig Wright, and so for me, I'm like, okay, then it worked. That's exactly what I wanted. Everybody pay attention. Everybody decide what your role is in this and where your incentives lie, and then make your move. Because that's what's going to make Bitcoin strong. It's not going to be strong if if everybody doesn't put their best foot forward. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not going to be strong. The hive is not going to be strong if every one of the bees is not playing their role every day to the hilt hardcore. And that's the most important thing, is to get people paying attention, because that's what gives Bitcoin its value. Yeah,
100%. On that note, can we get back together? Can ABC and SV break bread, or are we done? What do you think?
Here's what's so fantastic about this, is that most people don't realize how special what's happening right now really, really is.
It's amazing.
What's happening is you have two separate chains with no replay protection.
Right.
On the same network. Mm-hmm. It's proving that even though they may not like each other, that they can live in harmony, that it is possible. Mm-hmm. And this was something that Core said was impossible.
Right.
It could not occur. It would destroy the network, as a matter of fact. Not only did it not destroy the network, all these transactions got thrown at it from the Satoshi shotgun, which basically backfired.
Yeah, it seems like it.
It really was kind of a no-go. We had exahashes worth of hash power thrown at it, and transactions didn't get lost. The networks didn't fall apart. They're mining blocks. As a matter of fact, they've diverged enough to where probably on Monday you'll start to see exchanges start to open up for one or both of them. Mm-hmm. That in and of itself is, I was about to curse, is huge. Because it's absolutely huge, because it says that it eliminates fear. Mm-hmm. That means that there could have been a big block Bitcoin with no replay protection. It could have happened.
Right.
They could have just launched another version of BTC on the same network that's so important.
Right.
And so now what I think, it's interesting, your question there about can they get back together and can they break bread? What I would say is they haven't parted. They haven't parted. They're still organs on the same body. Because you can still create a bridge and bridge those two together. You can still replay transactions across them both. So now you can even create an index fund. This now you've got a situation where, and that's essentially what CoinText is doing right now. So if you've got an SV node and you've got an ABC node and you do a CoinText transaction, now this is probably going to change. We're going to see where the exchanges go with it.
Right.
But as of right now, which I think is important, is that if you've got a split transaction, CoinText won't see it. It's fine. It can be in your address. If you want to get your private key and you want to move it, that's just fine. Most people actually aren't moving split transactions, and most people didn't split it themselves. Most wallets didn't split it automatically. Right. And most people are not, because there's no exchanges. The Coinbase hasn't been traded. The newly mined coins haven't been traded.
Right.
So we've got transactions that are moving, and if you look at a SV node and you look at an ABC node and you're searching for the hash of the amount that you just sent, the transaction hash, it's going to be on both. It's going to be on both. So now what you have, and this was interesting, Ryan X. Charles was talking about this unified coin, and he was like, oh, we're going to have to pick a side. Unified coin is dead. No, man. Daniel Krawitz has been writing about how a Bitcoin index is what you really want. And so I foresee a future where, and this is what really and holders should really appreciate this and really want this, a future where, no, same network, no replay protection. Let's have 20 coins on there. Let's have 20 coins, because now you can move all 20 with the same hash. So that means that an exchange could say, okay, do you have the full index? Okay, well, that's worth 3 times. Like it's worth more than the sum of its parts. It's an index fund.
Sure.
So and I mean, I just saw I just saw a little clip from Warren Buffett where he was like, oh yeah, the smartest thing to do is just to buy index funds. That's it. So this creates a huge opportunity, and it's even better if the two sides don't like each other. Because for me, I don't care. I'm going to keep moving my own UTXOs across both chains. I'm going to continuously hold them both. And anybody who's smart didn't split theirs.
Right.
Anybody who's smart kept the Bitcoin Cash index. And so I hope that there's 6, 8, 10, 12, 20, because it changes the entire dynamic. If you imagine that it's on the same network, and it's got the same UTXOs and you can trade it as an index, is it even a different coin?
Yeah, that's some philosophical stuff. Is there a way to is there a concrete answer to that, or is it philosophical?
I think it's all. I think everything in Bitcoin is philosophical, right? But I think that the question is maybe more important than the answer, because the question is what gets people thinking about. Okay, this is a brand new asset. Sure. This is a brand new asset that it's an asset that you can hedge value, and wow, what a better way to hold. And then therefore you're like, no, I want there to be more experiments. I want there to be more. And even if a chain dies, okay, well, I lost that little piece of the index. That little piece is gone, but the rest of the index is still fully there. And even more important, as we get to a place where, where there is perhaps a threat from government actors.
Right.
Well, now you've got if they're a threat to me on my network, I can't just ignore that this other guy is getting attacked, and now it's very easy to move hash in that way. Very, very easy. So yeah, I don't think that they will get back together. I don't know if CoinGeek is going to continue mining SV. I can't necessarily see players coming in and mining that chain, especially if it's going to be at a significant loss. Right. So they're going to be all on their own for a long time, which has its positives and negatives. I mean, one of the things that I said back in June was, when I was saying, it looks like they might want to split the chain, and everybody's like, why would they? I don't understand. Why would they want to split the chain? And I said, well, my answer was to have their own chain and be able to have their own experiments without pesky questions from people like me. And there's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for being able to move fast, because you don't have to get community consensus, because you don't have to get community approval, where you're just like, nope, this is the direction that we're going to go and we're going to do it. That is a viable strategy for moving fast. It's much higher risk, but it's also much higher reward.
Sure. To
do it that way. You can be much more nimble. So yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a good thing, and people are going to make their decisions about which direction they want. But if you don't want to make a decision, you don't have to make a decision. Just keep trading that index.
Sure. So do you think, let's say, where do you think we're going to be in 2 weeks? Do you think we're going to be still mining parallel chains and replaying transactions, or do you think one of them is going to orphan? I was thinking the SV side had some kind of nuclear option somewhere.
I think that was, I think they didn't count on the checkpointing.
Yeah, perhaps
I think they were planning to reorg the chain, And I think that there may be multiple checkpoints on. There may be an implementation out there that's weird. There's this clip of Andreas Brecken saying something, and he may have just been tired. I don't know, but he seemed to indicate that there was a let's say, I don't want to use the word secret, but let's just say that there was a non-standard ABC patch that was sent out to some key miners and also to exchanges that perhaps had some additional checkpointing in it as well. I it remains to be seen what that means, but it's the kind of once you start down the checkpoint path, you can't go back. That's the basic thing about and for the people listening who don't necessarily understand that, the idea with the reorganization, blockchain reorganization, is that there could have been some, we could say, hidden hash power that was mining a chain. Let's say not including certain transactions. They were mining a kind of parallel chain that they weren't broadcasting out to the network. They were not relaying it. And then the idea would be that you get enough hash power onto that chain that then you get a block and you completely fill it in with this new parallel chain that you've been running. And once you fill that in, since it's the longest chain, all the other miners naturally just follow you. And so, because it's now the chain with the longest proof of work. And so once you relay and broadcast that out, so the thought was that perhaps that could be, and that's what I thought that they were doing. Like that's what I think
the obvious
everybody
thing to do.
That's what I think everybody thought. And so the answer to that was that ABC basically put in a checkpoint that says, essentially, you have to have this block hash within the entire blockchain. Otherwise, and they did it right after it split. So it's a block that includes transactions that would be invalid on SV. Because what you could potentially do if you're SV is you could be mining your chain off on your side. And then you could be mining the ABC chain in private. You reorganize it, and then in theory, you could merge those two chains back together, because you could mine an ABC chain that would be fully compatible with your SV chain. It would be possible to do. So, especially if you were mining two of them in private. So there was one you could see from SV, one you could see from ABC, and then two that you couldn't see that were basically exactly the same. Then you could merge them together. That's like, it's a thought experiment. Nobody's ever done it, but that's something that could have been happening. The checkpoints totally, it prevented that. So like it made the split permanent, basically. It's you still can replay transactions. There's no replay protection, but in terms of doing a reorganization and rewinding it all the way back to before the fork, that would be impossible. So yeah, I think that they're separate now forever. That doesn't mean that there can't be, with significant hash power, there's still a lot of things that you could do. You can mine empty blocks. You can do all kinds of things that could still disrupt communication with the exchanges, but at that point it's really kind of just vandalism. And I think that we're beyond that. I think that if there was a gambit that they were going to play, that it would have been played by now. I think that perhaps had the Satoshi shotgun worked as advertised, and had they gotten 1 million transactions per hour, that we could be sitting in a very, very different situation at this very minute as we're talking now. As it stands, I mean, they were able to get they were really sustaining at about 10 transactions per second. They had bursts up to like 100, a few bursts to 50. And so the ABC chain, most of the miners on the ABC chain were mining they had a soft cap set at between 4 megs and 8 megs. The SV chain, they mined some 32 meg blocks. I mean, that's awesome. They cleared out the mempool. That's awesome. That's what I was actually hoping that this thing would have actually worked as advertised, because look, I do think that if we're going to have a war about this, then yeah, now when everybody's paying attention, when the network is already in a state where people aren't spending, yeah, now's when I want you to do your stress test. I don't want you to do it unannounced with no report afterwards and all of this. No, they went through it this time, and they did it in a much more professional way with reports, and then also doing it at a time when the network was already in a state of flux, and every developer was looking at their terminals and was like, okay, here I'm ready to go. I'm taking care of putting out fires. That's the time to do it. And they basically, it was a dud. So, I hope that that's over with. I hope that if they want to do it on the SV chain. Right. I don't know what's going to happen. The creators of that, I guess it's just probably coincidence that also happened to be the winner of their $5 million Coingeek tokenizing award. Hope he had a good contract with them. I'm sure it's just coincidence. I'm sure that the $5 million award had absolutely nothing to do with building a supposed weapon. But now, since it didn't work, I hope I hope he's got a good lawyer and a rock solid contract so he could keep that $5 million.
Right. No, our arms dealers always do fine when their weapons don't work.
Exactly. Yeah, that's not a death sentence.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, so what a week, right? I mean,
it is. Yeah.
Looking at it. So here's why I'm pro SV, and I was pro SV after like late in the game. I was no fork. Like, let's not fork, guys, until literally about 10 days ago, maybe 2 weeks. And I realized, like, okay, if we actually believe that Bitcoin is sufficient, if we're going to take the leap and say we believe that the white paper gave us sufficient tools for peer-to-peer digital money for the world, that deserves to be tested. And regardless of Craig and his bad attitude and everything else, and bad attitude being the understatement of the year, like morbidly toxic human, who I also think is brilliant. And
he is, no doubt.
And frankly, I think the jury's out on the Satoshi Nakamoto aspect of the whole thing and all that. But the vision, the actual, like, I mean, have we not tried everything else? I mean, we tried 2.5-minute blocks. We've tried 5 algorithms at a time and 10-second blocks. And we've tried proof of stake. And we've tried masternodes that do 5 different things and all these different things. And what we haven't actually tried is an unleashed version of Bitcoin. Like just the 10-minute blocks and SHA-256, and every signature is hashed to a block every 10 minutes, blah, 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 blah. We haven't actually tried it. And that's what I wanted to see. And now I feel like, because of the politics that went into it, like looking at, ABC, and again, I think Amaury Sachet is a cool guy. Like I don't think anybody's evil. I don't know that anybody in the entire fight is actually evil. We're all assholes. I'm an asshole when I need to be too. But and I think it brought that out of everybody. Like, there were things that were said, and I think there were things that were done. I think even some of the deals that Roger seems to have made on the back end, it's like, okay, Roger, that was a little bit of a dick move to do, like,
sure.
Underhanded, under the table, handshake deals. And I get it. War brings out the worst in all of us. Nobody signs up and says, I'm going to join the army and I'm going to blow up a village of kids. Right. Like that's
right.
But then you're standing there with your sergeant telling you to pull the damn trigger and threatening the court martial and everything else. And then we get what we get. And so I'm curious, if SV ends up being, I mean, is the SV chain gonna lock up? Like, is it just gonna stop being mined if it becomes too unprofitable for too long? It seems like that's what the economics would bear out.
Yeah, I mean, that could be the case. It depends on how dedicated Calvin is to keeping hash on it. Right. And also how much hash actually needs to, I mean, they can ramp it down significantly. I do not think anybody has any intention of 51% attacking it. Right. And so what they're going to want to do over time is they're going to want to start ramping down the hash rate on it, get the difficulty to adjust down significantly so that they could get it into a manageable state. And then, you know, as you start to reduce the hash power on it, it's when it starts to get more profitable to mine.
Sure.
So now it's not profitable because the difficulty is way too high because there's been way too much hash power on it. But as you start ramping it down, you know, if you're not getting attacked, then you know, you're doing okay. I think to your point about, you know, I am absolutely sympathetic to the idea of like, let's just not change it. I mean, I've been developing on the platform since 2014. I wish that it still looked like it did in 2014, honestly. Like, it was amazing. And that was one of the reasons why I lost enthusiasm for it in like 2015, 2016, was because the economics of it was really changing as the fees started to get higher and whatnot. But I think one thing that we have to keep in mind is that there are a lot of incentives. There's basically like, I view it as there's basically kind of 4, I don't know if you want to call them energies, varnas, whatever it is, classes, whatever it is. But you've got your sort of end users, that includes your consumers and your merchants. We're all that at one time or another. You've got your app level, your app layer, which is your wallets, exchanges, all the applications that are going to be there. And that's the connection between the user. The user has to, most users have to go through that layer. Especially now that most people are not running full nodes who are into crypto. So you've got that layer. Then you have your protocol developer layer. And then you have your miner layer, which is your capitalists. They're the ones who are going to be basically they're funding the crypto economy because that's where all of the freshly mined crypto is coming from. And so obviously they're the ones that can actually jumpstart the economy. And each one of those, each one of those classes has their own incentives.
Right.
And it's the interplay of those incentives that keeps everything moving along. And so the idea that there's going to be some sort of stasis is just not the reality. So some of those incentives are diametrically opposed to one another. What a miner wants clearly can be completely different from first it can be completely different from what another miner wants. And that's going to affect where the money is getting pushed and who is getting put to the forefront in the protocol layer and in the application layer. And you know, what an app developer wants and what a user wants can also be completely different. It's finding the synthesis between the two. And so we're never going to this idea that the protocol was set in stone is it needs to be interpreted, I think, in the correct way. And that is that it was set in stone in that you're not going to go back and rewrite from the beginning.
Right.
But meaning it was set in stone in terms of it's this point in history that you can't turn around and go back. And that even if all of the networks were to fall apart, they would come back because it's sort of like Newtonian physics almost. Like Bitcoin is the law of cryptocurrency. There's not going to be cryptocurrency that doesn't take Bitcoin into consideration as it moves forward. So Bitcoin, a network is going to evolve. When you have these many different incentives that are all playing against each other, the network's going to evolve. And part of the network evolving is the software evolving. And that's going to be based on the individual personalities who are involved, which is the reason why you should not, in this space that is a permissionless, non-hierarchical, consensus-based space, you should never bet on somebody who closes off their connections to other nodes. And by that, I mean, who you want to bet on is you want to bet on the person that knows how to negotiate and knows how to cooperate.
Sure. Because
that's what this system is all about. That's what Bitcoin is built on. You want to bet on the person who's at the center of the network. You want to bet on the person who has the most connections that are viable connections to other nodes on the network. So I think what we're going to see here is that the reason why I think so many people are sympathetic to what the logical and technical arguments are for SV.
Mm-hmm.
I am like, just on paper, if someone was like, okay, here are the two things that we're going to do. We're either going to do this ABC roadmap over here, or we're going to do this SV roadmap. I'm like, dude, well, that's the one with the least amount of changes. Is everything working? Yeah, everything's working great. Well, then that's what I want.
Right.
As a developer myself, I'm not going to add extra complexity in. That's just a recipe for disaster.
Right.
But Bitcoin is not just the technical, because I also have to look down the road in the future and say, okay, are my questions about future things that are happening going to be answered? Am I dealing with somebody who, because everybody has their own preferences, am I dealing with somebody who cannot be persuaded once they have their mind set? Mm-hmm. And not only can they not be persuaded, but they just will not take in any new information.
Yeah.
If I'm dealing with that, I can't bet on that person in this system.
Right.
In the way that a consensus-based permissionless system works, where I can't kick them out, I can't bet on that person.
Sure.
I can't allow that person to have control over a resource that I need access to. I simply can't. Right. So I look at them as a faulty node on the network. I don't want to connect to the faulty node.
Right.
I need my connections to be completely clean, and so eventually the faulty node gets severed and it gets isolated from the network.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's unfortunate and it's tragic. And I mean, even in my little, piece my little video piece, like I said that it's tragic. It's tragic. The story of Craig Wright, honestly, because, and it's tragic the way that this thing has turned out, because there were some good arguments over there.
Yeah.
But there was too much toxicity, and history has shown, unfortunately, and I mean, this is the trade-off that we're going to have to deal with, is that there were a lot of bad ideas on the ABC side.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've been handed a victory.
Right.
A lot of it historically, that's generally considered a mandate.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people take that as, oh, I was right.
Right.
when really the other guy was just more wrong than you.
Right.
And there are a lot of problems, and if they don't get fixed, there are some real trade-offs. So I hope that people start paying attention, because it's not that ABC was right. It's that Craig Wright was just more wrong.
Well, and that's the problem. I mean, it was an election, right?
That's right.
And for that, it's you're literally voting on which color of painted shit you vote for. And almost any election that I can think of ever, that's been your options. It's like, well, which side of my head do I want to be kicked on?
That's right.
And I should point out that, like, one of the first, like, I thought Craig was great. As soon as Craig came to the Bitcoin Cash community, I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. Like, I always kind of liked Craig, this enigmatic, crazy guy. And then my first bit of like, I'm not happy about this was actually when he blocked you on Twitter. And that whole debacle. And I was like, man, I don't know Vin, but I feel like I know Vin because I listened to your podcast and stuff. And like, it was like, man, I feel like that definitely could have been handled better. And then,
for sure.
But then I don't know. It's like, maybe you're an asshole in real life, and Craig's had dinner with you.
I've never been told that. I have very, very few. I have very few enemies. What's weird is that since that time, it's been an interesting experience for me, because I was on reality TV, and so of course I had haters. But that's just haters, right? That's just people being trolly and people you don't know hating on you.
Right.
But I had never really felt like I had people who were enemies, right? And so it was this very weird scenario where I was like, oh my God, is there this group of people out there that really dislikes me? And then it was this weird sort of thing, like, what did they dislike me for again? I can't really put my finger on it. Like, what's going on? So no, but that is not the team that you want to bet on. Sure. Like, if you want, because you need, again, Linus's law. If you're cutting off the eyeballs that can see the bugs,
Right.
then you're blowing it. Like you're basically cutting yourself out of the most valuable resource in the space that we're in, because the most valuable resource in the space that we're in is human minds.
Right.
Because Bitcoin is an imaginary good. So there's no more valuable resource than human minds, and particularly human imagination. Mm-hmm. And so what I saw a group of people who were cutting themselves off from and being toxic toward people who had answers for that.
Right.
And who were legitimately in the beginning, because that was certainly my situation, trying to contribute to actually allowing them to do, or not even allowing, but like enabling things to occur that they wanted to occur in a safe manner, if that makes sense. Or in a
trying to open the door to let N-Chain come in and talk, right? I mean,
dude, well, I got blocked by them because I saw these two initiatives, and if people go back and look at my initial tweet, it said the first words are, I'm really trying to give this the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
But I see this as potentially an attack vector. Can you explain to me how you're going to how this is not an attack vector? That's the tweet.
Right.
That's what started a situation where I got called a socialist and a bullshit artist and a shit stirrer and all of this. And then for months was basically was blocked, but my tweets were showing up in insults. And it's just like, if you're going, that's not who you want to bet on. You don't want to bet on the person who doesn't even look at the bug report that you submit to GitHub.
Right.
You don't, not in open source. That's the dumbest thing you could possibly do.
Sure.
Because it makes the assumption that you have all the answers. Well, if you have all the answers, don't be involved in an open source community. Because the whole entire idea behind open source is that nobody has all the answers.
Yep.
So it's tragic. It's actually really
it is.
tragic.
No, and well, that's the thing is I think it's tragic too. Like I said, I'm pro SV, but like I'm personal friends with people that work at Bitcoin.com and the whole thing. And like, you know, I look at it and I'm trying to find the way for, at the very least, the communities to come back and work together. I don't want us to be Bitcoin Cash SV or.
I think that's gone. I mean, I think the you know, that community split was something that was so unnecessary.
Yeah.
And I don't know which side drove it more. I honestly don't know, but I think that it's the nature of, it's something that I had seen coming, and that Bitcoin is religious. I mean, it's an imaginary good. It's a value system. And that makes it akin to a religion. Like it's people hate when I use that term, and they really, really like push back against it.
It's because you're right.
Well, but I think it's also because there's a negative connotation to religion in our sort of modern time. And that's because we can actually call it religion.
Right.
But at the times when it was most important and when it was really a guiding and organizing principle, it wasn't a religion, it was an identity. So the idea, you weren't a practitioner of the Jewish religion during the time of Jesus. You were a Jew.
Right.
And that meant a whole lot more than being a practitioner of Judaism.
Right.
And now that's the phase that we're in with Bitcoin, is that it's not, maybe in the future people will look back and be like, oh, we're practicing the religion of Bitcoin.
Right.
But no, now we're Bitcoiners.
Right.
And so just as it was in Christianity, just as it was in Judaism, I mean, that's what the breakup of Jesus's followers from Judaism was.
Sure.
And I mean, there were all kinds of sects, John the Baptist and the whole, this is in every religion.
Yeah.
We're in the time of schisms right now.
Yeah.
And that's why we're arguing over minutia.
Right.
Minutia.
Yeah. Two lines of code floating in a cloud, and we're ready to kill each other over it.
to where it's the end of the world. But in reality, it is the end of the world. Like it really is, because it's going to determine how history turns out.
Sure.
There were these types of battles I've been recommending to everybody, and I love this book, but it's Darmaid McCullough, Christianity, the First 3,000 Years.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, to go through, especially the first like 300 years, and see just how weird Christianity got, how many little sects, and how serious they took it.
Right.
I mean, they were like this little thing was exactly what was going on, but bishops would get killed.
Right.
They have assassins sent out after them over the smallest little. No, he's got to go.
Color of your hat.
That's you're gone. You're gone. Your red hat gone. Red hat. Those red hats are gone. And so I think that this is just a normal part of humans doing what humans do. But it's an amazing sign for Bitcoin, because if you look like those belief systems that took over the world, if you're following the same path that they are. And you look around and you don't see anything else that's really got that same level of potency and power, then that really looks good for your sort of belief system moving forward. I
agree. Well, and it's funny. I love that analogy, and people always criticize me for using religious analogies as well. And I get the same thing. It's like, well, I mean, everybody has a worldview. I believe humans are innately religious, and I don't care if you're whatever. You can be a Corvette guy, or you can be whatever, but that's your religion if that's what it is. And it's a guiding principle upon which you build an identity and everything else. Like I walk around with crypto t-shirts on because that's frankly it is my religion, and that's a part of the process. And like I think it's interesting how those things bear out, especially in hindsight. Like looking at, I always make this case, like look at how Catholics and Baptists criticize each other. Well, they're big problems. Well, you have a priest. Well, you only have a pastor, and your bishops, blah, 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 little things. But if you ask let's say you ask an agnostic or ask a Buddhist, like, what's the difference between these two people?
Right.
And the answer is, well, frankly, nothing. To me, like there are minutia. It's garbage, right? And it's funny because I'm trying to analyze this split, the hash war, whatever else, including the one with BTC.
Sure.
From somebody who's a complete outside, like let's put myself in the 300 years in the future and look back at this and say, okay, what wheels were turning, and what is the actual best long-term outcome for not just me, not my portfolio or my, I called that signal early, that kind of thing. And to look back and say, what was the best thing for the most people? And I don't know. I'm still working it out because this whole hash war is happening now. But one thing that I've noticed is actually the SV side has done exactly what they said they would do, which is bring the hash power that they said they had, use the hash power that they said they had, and they didn't. They don't seem to have had a nuclear option anywhere. And
or it was terribly planned.
Maybe it was
thwarted.
Perhaps
could have been. We don't know.
And we don't know, but what it looks like is comparatively, I look at the ABC side and I see, like, first of all, rented hash to me is kind of like doing business with the enemy a little bit. Like, not, again, I'm not ready to line anybody up and shoot them, but it strikes me as like, okay, well, that's like that was not you signaling your love for Bitcoin Cash or your long-term confidence in it for months. Otherwise, Bitcoin.com and Bitmain and everybody would have had that hash there, right? If they believed that Bitcoin Cash was to be the coin. And I'm a little bit worried about the precedent that it sets. And I was listening to Jimmy Nguyen from earlier today.
Sure.
And,
I heard his statement today too.
Yeah, and he echoed exactly what I was thinking is like, man, if someone like Roger, who's wealthy, and Bitcoin.com is wealthy and it was well earned and all of that, but in the grand scheme of things, Roger is nowhere near as rich as, the CIA slush fund, for example.
No.
And given that, like, to set that precedent that, like, we can have a burst of hash power for 2 days and that a few handshakes and a little bit of code can turn an implementation into the fourth largest coin in circulation, like, that's a really, really terrifying precedent to set. And those are the casualties of a of a war that you're trying to win in the short term. And yet, and when you look long term, if we're going to look at it from 300 years down the road, we may look at this incident today and say, well, from then on, large banks and large corporations and nefarious government players and even government agencies that are operating in the shadows were able to install 2 developers to create an implementation, and it cost them $50 million to pump up some hash that they bought from 5 different places, and they paid off CZ from Binance, and this is Bitcoin now. And then it occurred to me, well, why not do the exact same thing with BTC? I mean, let's raise $50 million, hire a couple of developers, create a competing implementation, split the chain, no replay protection, and let's go for it. What's stopping that? Because now that's the precedent that we have shown can at least push it as far as it's been pushed, which is a lot farther than I thought it would go. And so we've made our way outside of governance by proof of work, at least a little bit. And what,
well, I guess that depends, right? So the first part about that is the group that brought in the rented hash was not the group that declared a hash war.
Sure.
And had war not been declared against them, you wouldn't have seen any rented hash come in. So I think fundamentally what we saw here, and again, it seemed it was very surreal for me to listen to what Jimmy was saying, because the entire narrative that was coming from out of that camp, just rewind back to his time for Bitcoin to grow up speech.
Sure.
The entire narrative coming from them was, it's about money and it's about hash power, and whoever has the money and the hash power rules. Now, if you want to professionalize, if you want this to be an industry, well, as with any industry that's capital intensive, sometimes it makes sense for you to own your equipment, and sometimes it makes sense for you to lease your equipment for the time that you need it.
Right.
And the company that is the most effective in figuring out, okay, how long do we need this backhoe for? Oh, we only need it for 2 days. Okay, well, we're just going to lease it for those 2 days. Or how long do we need these semi trucks for? Or how long do we need these shipping containers for? So if you want to play the game of capitalist and you want to play the game of capitalism, you can't get angry when somebody uses their capital in a more efficient manner than you do. And so it's a very sort of ironic twist that these guys would say, it's all about money. It's all about whoever has the most hash. And then, but they didn't use their money and their hash in the way that we used our money and our hash, so that's not fair. Well, then you shouldn't have made it about the money and the hash in the first place.
But I think is it within the governance model though? And I know some of it's a little bit vague.
What is within the governance model, right? Like that's it, again, it's what gives Bitcoin value.
Right.
What gives Bitcoin value? What's within the governance model does not matter if nobody wants to buy the UTXOs.
Right.
Like we can talk about what's within the governance model and what's not, but if it never gets traded on an exchange, does it really matter?
Right.
Does it really matter? Like, so what I've said from the beginning is what I've said about the way that I approach, and the reason why I've been able to remain relatively neutral in this whole thing. There are some personalities that I have personal issues with, but in terms of the actual, like the meat of the matter, I'm able to remain neutral because I say there's basically 3 things that I need to see. One, I need to see basically instant transactions, right? That it can do, like in this context, it would be like zero conf, and that I can, so money can come and I can immediately send it out. So chain dependency, zero conf, that's what it would be in Bitcoin. Right. I need to see sub 1 cent miner fees or transaction fees, under a cent. So that means it's fundamentally free because I can't give you a half a penny. That's right. I can't even do that. And then I need to see a large community evangelizing for it. That is not there and not there to pump, but is actually there because they care about the project and they want to see it move forward. If I see those three things, I can support that coin. Now, everything after that, see, because I think those are the things that give it value.
Mm-hmm.
Everything after that, if there is if it's plausible that it is decentralized enough, or that it is permissionless enough that there's not going to be huge barriers to entry, particularly for me as an entrepreneur,
Right.
and for my users. If my users can be onboarded quickly, there's nothing for them to sign up that they need. There's nothing that's going to track them. I'm in. Everything else from there, I'm like, let the market decide. Let the market decide what makes Bitcoin valuable.
Right.
That's not for me. I mean, I know what I think makes Bitcoin valuable, and if I'm right, then I'll profit from that. But if I'm not, what? Sure. I don't get to say. If nobody wants to trade it, it's clearly me that's wrong.
Right.
It's not everybody else.
So then, I mean, is there a way then? Here's, I'll make three analogies at once. I would say Bitcoin is defined by the white paper just as much as Christianity is defined by the Bible.
Sure.
Just as much as the rules of an official basketball game are determined by the NBA.
Sure.
And those are three different things that I think allow almost anybody to consider, okay, like, what are my values vis-a-vis those three statements? And, so I would say if I want to play NBA basketball, yet I do not want to dribble, then I don't actually want to play NBA basketball.
Right.
However, if I want to be a Christian and I don't believe in the virgin birth and the resurrection, then I'm not really a Christian.
Well, according to who?
Well, sure. But there we go. There's the first, that's I don't know, it's, well, you're a cult if you don't believe that, but you're and that's that whole thing. And then the same thing, like, I believe Bitcoin can be proof of stake and have 10-second block times. And, so then we get into this conversation, like, what is is Litecoin Bitcoin?
That is the question. And that's what I ask people all the time whenever this question comes up. Mm-hmm. And it's, we just had this Ideal Bitcoiner event with myself and Daniel Krawitz and Krista Rose here. Mm-hmm. And that's a question that I always ask. And we delved into that it's like, there's two questions. Mm-hmm. One, what is Bitcoin? Two, what makes Bitcoin valuable? Sure. Those two questions should stop everybody in their tracks.
Right.
They should absolutely stop you in your tracks. It's why it's nails on a chalkboard when, for me, whenever I hear Craig Wright use his famous pretext of what nobody understands about Bitcoin, or what people don't understand about Bitcoin. That's nails on a chalkboard to me, because I'm like, nobody understands anything about Bitcoin.
Sure.
Nobody understands anything about Bitcoin, because what is Bitcoin? What is it? It's clearly not what's written in the white paper. It's clearly not, because not enough people agree with that. I'm like, is it just one network? Well, then where did these other networks come from? They only got here because they flow from out of what Satoshi Nakamoto did. Mm-hmm. Had he not written the white paper, there would be no Monero. There would be no Ethereum.
Sure.
I mean, Vitalik started out working on Bitcoin.
Right.
And then because he could not get the things into Bitcoin that he wanted in, that's how Ethereum came about. So the question is there Ethereum if there's no Bitcoin? And then if that's the case, is Ethereum Bitcoin too? I mean, it's the same thing with Islam. With Islam, right? That it's like,
right.
Islam is basically a hybrid of Christianity and Judaism, and then moved into like the Arab legal system. So you ask, well, is Islam, Christianity, and Judaism? Well, Muhammad certainly thought that at least they were related.
Right. Yeah.
People of the book, like he definitely was like, well, there's some relationship here.
Right.
Between us.
Well, so, they share a common history. So
this is what I'm saying.
It's the same as Bitcoin, right?
Well, but isn't that so? Then the question becomes like, well, what is the common history of Bitcoin? Is it the Genesis block? Like, is it the UTXO set? Or is it something deeper than that? Is it the human understanding? Because I would argue that Vitalik is part of the common history of an important part of the common history of Bitcoin. I mean, his Python library has been one of the most impactful. His Bitcoin Python library has been one of the most some of the most impactful code. I mean, it's everywhere in this ecosystem. His code for Bitcoin is everywhere in this ecosystem. So you ask, is Vitalik not part of the shared history?
Right.
And if so, then Ethereum is Bitcoin.
Sure.
Because Bitcoin is, what is Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is a shared history.
Interesting.
That's what the blockchain is. It's a shared history. The entire reason for consensus rules, for Nakamoto consensus, is to get to a shared history.
Right.
But does that begin and end on the blockchain? That's the question. Or does it extend into the meat space? Because if it does, and see, so this is why, what is Bitcoin? What makes Bitcoin valuable? And anybody who thinks they know the answers to that should not be trusted.
Well, sure. Okay, so let's break it down to, let's say we were going to have a religious conversation. What is Christianity? What is the most legitimate version of Christianity, right? And that's going to be a conversation that, had on the street, you're going to get essentially low-level answers, right?
Yes.
And then if you were to have this conversation between, somebody at the Vatican whose job it is to be like an auditor of theology versus someone from, the Southern Baptist Convention or the Presbyterian Church.
Oh, well, dude, even the person you're describing at the Vatican and then the average priest,
right,
would be very different.
Sure, a huge divergence.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it begs the question: is there some level of expertise that's necessary to have an actual answer, or are we so anachronistic as a species that there's no, like, that there is no authority, right? Like, and then it breaks down, like, is there truth? And that's the real question, right? When it comes down to, like, I believe there must be an absolute truth, but I also withhold that it may be completely unknowable. And
well, it's an infinite game, right? So this was in my little speech that I said, that was my message to Calvin, that I said, Bitcoin is an infinite game, and you can't win at an infinite game, because in order for a winner to be declared, a game must end.
Right.
And so in order to get the answer, you can't get the answer of what is Bitcoin. You can't get the answer of what is Christianity. You can't get the answer of what is truth, because it's an infinite game. In order to make the measurement about any of these things, the game would have to end.
Sure.
Because you can't fully know truth, because you don't know what's coming in the future. Just like you don't know what Bitcoin, because we would say that's why Christianity the first 3,000 years is so amazing. Because at any one of those times, in those, it goes a 1,000 years beforehand, but I would say in any of the 2,000 years from the time of Christ, at any one of those points, you could ask, what is Christianity? And you get a completely different answer. And if you ask 300 years from now, it's going to be completely different. And that's because it's an infinite game. And so what we had with this hash war was we had yet again an exploration of what is Bitcoin.
Sure.
And what we know it to be now is completely different than, I think, if we really stopped and looked at what the landscape looks like now. I think it's a completely different landscape than it was even a month ago.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
So that's how we can keep humble, is to keep asking ourselves, what is Bitcoin and what makes Bitcoin valuable? To keep interrogating again and again and again, and to never get into a situation where we think we know, because I don't think we do.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. We should probably wrap up. We're at like an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah. I love talking about this stuff.
I know. I could literally go all day and night. One more. Let's end with a bomber. All right.
Okay.
If we take Christianity, and Christianity the first 3,000 years is a fantastic book. Yep. However, I believe that it functions under the assumption. It seems to function under the assumption that the author does not believe in God.
I think that's pretty. Yes.
And I think he was.
I think he was a historical text. Yeah.
Yes, and I think he was academic enough for a Christian to read it and say this was great, and for an atheist to read it and say I've learned a lot, and for neither to actually be offended. But I believe his assumption is that there is no God, which is obviously informs the rest of his worldview as he pursues the book. And I think that if we're going to have that conversation, that we do all get a an opinion about what is Christianity.
Sure.
Unless we're having the conversation with God, right?
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. And I think that's true of Bitcoin as well. And that's one of the wonderful things about the fact that Satoshi Nakamoto left.
Yeah.
I think had it not been Satoshi Nakamoto, this alias, and had that individual not vanished, at least as the alias, I don't think that it would have the necessary mythological power that it has. I don't think it ever would have caught on in the same way. So I think because we can't ask Satoshi is exactly why it's going to keep why the human spirit wants to keep moving it forward in that way.
Yeah. Do you think anybody, assuming somebody has the keys, and I have my own theories, I actually think to get super religious, I think Satoshi is a triumvirate. I think it's three guys.
Okay.
I actually think it's Hal, Dave, and Craig. That's
interesting. Okay.
That's my assumption based on a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay.
Now, assuming Craig, let's say Craig moves a Genesis coin. Let's say he makes one Bitcoin transaction and said he was 2 hours earlier.
Yep.
That's still not going to make anybody happy, right? Like that. I mean, the cult of Craig will 100% be like, well, there it is. But it doesn't actually tell us that he definitively is Satoshi either, right?
I think it's at least a step in the right direction because I think it's the bare minimum. It's the bare minimum for somebody to. I think that there will still be doubters. There probably is no amount of proof that someone could offer, but that for some people, right? For some people, for me that would be enough to say, well, he's got the keys. Until somebody else says otherwise, that's pretty damn good. Like I'm going to go with that. And but I am a betting man, and I bet that that's not going to occur. So.
I've seen. I don't know if you've publicly come out, but I'm in the CoinText Telegram, and I've seen your opinions on who you think is, and I don't disagree. Obviously, it's part of
exactly
part of my presumptions as well, But yeah, so I don't know. I guess we should wrap up for the sake of
This is great. Thank you guys for having me.
We'd love to have you back too if you want to cover other topics.
Absolutely, anytime. Just let me know. I'm around.
Awesome.
Yeah, I had a great time.
So this video's title is "Bitcoin is a Religion."
Oh, perfect.
Because we're letting it create itself on the fly. So
I love that.
So cool.
All right, gentlemen.
To anybody listening, please subscribe. You can find us on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, everywhere else. Check out Vin at cointext.io. And where else can they find you, Vin?
VinArmani.com, at VinArmani on Twitter. I'm on Twitter all day.
Beautiful. Love it. And of course, you can find us at CryptoTradersPro.com, and we will be on the internet. And until then, I guess we'll see you on the moon, everybody.